Welcome everyone to the Story Trading Weekly Meetup. It's July 5th, special holiday edition. I know a lot of you are probably still late getting back home, so we're going to be recording this and making it available to our VIP members this week, and parts of the presentation will be uploaded to YouTube after a 7-day embargo period. Just a reminder, Story Trading is not an investment advisor, and that goes for all of our guests as well, unless they state otherwise. And investing in securities involves significant risk of loss. So before we get started on the agenda tonight, we got a bunch of things. I'm going to try to go fast. But I just want to harken back to the inspiration behind story trading and what a story trade is. And I want to do that because we're coming up soon on our private beta app launch for iPhone and Android here in August. And as we do that, we want to kind of refocus everyone on this idea of discovering, collaborating, and validating market-moving information through crowdsourced research and social collaboration. That's what our app is going to be all about. In addition, the end goal here is to understand market pricing through the lens of the 4 pillars of fundamentals, catalyst, sentiment, and technical. So those of you who are going to get invited to our private beta app in August, there's not going to be a big focus on trade ideas or anything like that. Probably not for perhaps a couple of years, because initially the app will be all about crowdsourced research and social collaboration, but we have our eye on the target. And again, what is that target? It's making sense out of the market, understanding market price action through the lens of these 4 pillars. So when I present AIR tonight, sometimes we haven't done it, we've skipped over it, but I'm going to try to really focus on these 4 pillars going forward when I present, and I'll ask our guest presenters to do the same. So tonight I'm going to talk about AIR. We'll have chart and commentary from Rex. We also have Ashleigh Day here. It was his VIP pick, so he's here to discuss as well. So after my quick trade idea presentation, we'll talk to Ashleigh about his VIP pick perspective on AIR. Quickly, we'll see how much time allots, but we'll talk about the Surfside collapse in Miami and some trade ideas that may be available there. We'll do an update on the top picks that were presented last week and trade of the week. Those last 2 sections are not going on YouTube, so if you want to see that, please become a VIP member. All right, so AIR Test Systems, ticker symbol AEHR, last trade 274. Again, I'll do a trade update. Ashleigh on his pick is up 7% since March 14th. And I just want to remind everyone, if you go to StoryTrading.com, click on VIP Performance up in the menu bar, you will see the spreadsheet of VIP picks, but you're also going to see in this column the YouTube links. So if you want to see Ashleigh's presentation, you just look for AIR right there, and you can click on that YouTube. You can always just go to Story Trading YouTube channel as well, but just wanted to point that out to everyone. All right, so coming back to these 4 pillars on AIR, and basically I've had a long-term position in AIR for a long time. I probably did, and I think I did increase my core position when Ashleigh presented as a VIP pick. So thank you for that, Ashleigh. In addition, though, in the last couple weeks, I've been building a trade position on top of that, on top of my core. And quite honestly, I'm not sure I'm done buying. It's still just a 5% of my portfolio, and it's something as a trade, I think I might be willing to go 10% plus. So a lot more room for me if I can reallocate things. So talking about the 4 pillars, this is from Y charts. And what we can see here historically is that the fundamentals are not there yet, at least on a reported basis. I have here the revenue. We know they're not profitable, so I didn't even get into that yet. But you got the quarterly revenue, and we see that it's just inconsistent, right? That's the blue line. I want to monitor their cash position, and it's just straggling along there at 5 million. And you can see they've had a little bit of dilution here as well. So the trailing fundamentals have not broken out. So we need to infer fundamentals from the catalysts. So let's talk about the catalysts. And, I'm not the best person to do fundamentals. So as the story hopefully comes together, we need to collaborate with the fundamental experts in our community so they can help us with financial model and analysis of what a price target might be. So in terms of inferring future fundamentals, let's look at catalysts. And the real key for AIR is, what's that inflection point? Where is that inflection point? We've been struggling with this for 2 or 3 years, especially if you're not really well-versed in this industry and the technology. There's a lot of lingo in there. It's really confusing in terms of what's a test run, what's a production run. Again, did they reach that inflection point? It's been very hard to tell. Like, again, as a novice in this space, when you look at their press releases, I thought, some of the ways these press releases are written, to me, it's like, yeah, they hit that inflection point. Like, I thought they hit it 5 times already, right? So here we go. And I've talked to the company too on several occasions. This stuff is pretty complex, but anyway, that's the key, identifying the inflection point. So let's go into the catalyst. So I want to talk about the PRs, the last two. June 2nd, there was a 2.3 million order. June 30th, it was a 1.4 million order. I found that very interesting. I found the commentary in these two very interesting. So we're going to dissect that a little bit. In addition, Ashleigh put up a note a few days ago in some of the groups that a PDF to a Project Royal investor presentation. So Ashleigh, we're going to talk to you about that tonight. You hinted it might have something to do with AIR, so we'll come back to you on that. So June 2nd. So look at some of the wording I got out here on the 2.3 million order. First of all, this was a follow-on order. This was for a Fox system, right? It's a follow-on order from their lead silicon carbide customer. It's for a Fox XP system for high volume production. So I've been seeing these PRs and I've been seeing the words high volume production, right? So is this for production or are they testing it? Again, I see that word and it looks like it's for production, especially with what about to show you. And what's interesting, electric vehicle power modules. That's a very hot area. So I bolded and underlined that. Keep that in mind. In that PR, they said they expect a full set of WaferPak orders for the system in the fiscal year just begun, which is June, right? It started June. So they were basically teasing that, there would be more orders coming in June, right? That's the next PR has to do with that. So they delivered on that. And they talk a little bit about this lead. It's a Fortune 500 supplier, significant customer base in the automotive semiconductor market. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. And then they said, expect significant number of Fox systems from this customer already forecasted to purchase from AIR over the next several years. I'm like, did the market not see this PR? I don't know. Like maybe this isn't enough to turn the fundamentals around, but that was pretty important, it looks like. Also, beyond that, discussion with multiple key companies in the silicon carbide space. And then they had a very large paragraph on growth trends in the electrical silicon carbide, but specifically in the electrical EV space. So this is very interesting to me because EV space is really hot. So then we have 3 weeks later, 1.4 million order, 28 days later, so 4 weeks. Again, it's for that lead customer. So it's verifying that it was a follow-on. They held their promise, right, for WaferPak contractors. But here's where it starts getting, for me, a little bit unclear, because in that PR, it says the order includes additional WaferPaks to meet production capacity. So to me, it's unclear. Is that beyond what was originally forecasted, right? Do we look at this PR and say, it's not news because they said 28 days ago they're going to order WaferPaks, right? But this language, additional, makes me think that maybe it happened sooner. Maybe it was a larger order than they expected. And then again, another unclear word that may be positive, they say includes another new silicon carbide design win. Now, from who? Because they did say the 1.4 million was from the lead customer. So it looks like that lead customer, right? Something in there may be another silicon carbide design winner, or maybe was it a second customer? But again, this is something maybe perhaps beyond expectation that was set in the PR 4 weeks prior to this. Now, some commentary they had in the PR is that this order reflects the lead customer's increased high volume production capacity needs. So again, potentially this is a clue that this is beyond expectations, that the volume production was increasing beyond what they already expected in early June, perhaps. And then they reiterated that this customer will order a significant number of Fox systems, WaferPaks, and related consumables, which is already forecasted by the company to purchase from AIR over the next several years. Combined, these two PRs to me seem extremely bullish, and I'm thinking maybe that inflection point is here, just maybe, right? So we'll need some collaboration with some great people here to figure that out.
I'm also in touch with management trying to get them to speak. I think they said they're in a quiet period, but we'll try to get that as well. So lots of puzzle pieces to put together. So that's Catalyst. So let's go to sentiment. And Ashleigh, I'm going to get all your feedback on this in just a couple minutes. Now we go to sentiment. And what I'm seeing on social media is that AIR is increasingly being seen as a semiconductor pure play for whatever reason, warranted or not, regarding the whole semiconductor shortages. I'm not sure that it has anything directly to do with that, but it's still out there in terms of sentiment. This one, though, I think this has more truth to it because the last two PRs, increasingly seen as an electrical vehicle play. It seems it's all about EV, the last two. I mean, that's a significant amount of revenue being announced here in 28 days for EV, especially compared to this market cap. So to me, this is something that the traders could pick up on, and in fact, they have, getting guru attention. I didn't do a full review of this, but the stock sniper happens to be someone I follow on Twitter, and he has 242,000 followers, and he was promoting AIR very heavily on May 19th. Now, he came and he went, but I think he might be back, right? On that day, huge volume, stock went up 17%, closed near the high of the day. So these three are important to look at. So that's the sentiment portion. Oh, in addition, just FY, for what it's worth, not that it means anything, but I did speak to a $1 billion hedge fund about AIR, and they said they knew of AIR. They hadn't done the due diligence yet, but it kept showing up on screens. I found that very interesting because this is a hedge fund that plays in our territory. Most of their picks and most of their investments are microcap companies, technology microcap companies that are kind of overlooked, that there's an inflection point kind of coming or already came, but people haven't noticed it, right? And they said AIR kept on showing up in their screens. This is a very large hedge fund compared to the market cap. So I talked to the owner and portfolio manager of this hedge fund, and they seemed interested in it. I'm not going to have any further discussions with them because of kind of SEC guidelines and things like that. They kind of do their own thing. They don't collaborate or discuss ideas with anybody, but I gave them the idea and, who knows? So that's sentiment. Now, technicals. I'm going to give my view on technicals first, and then I did speak to Rex, so I'll share his comments and his chart. So when I look at technicals here, I like this. This is a 20 DMA over here, I believe, right there. And since the recent news, it's held up well. It bounced off the 50. It's above the 20 now. I like this little pattern here. I don't know what it's called technically. I'm not like a super duper technical trader or anything, but I kind of like this pattern. And I think with the recent catalysts, we could see it breaking the recent highs here. I think it's around 285 or something. And if it does, then I think probably a quick shot to 3. And basically in this move, this is why I'm going overweight. I see a pretty good chance of challenging 350 in the very near term. Again, on the legs of this catalyst and the sentiment and the focus on EV, I think it's only a matter of time. If it's not truly the inflection point, right? Even if it's not, I think just sentiment wise, I think some gurus will pick it up or some different trading groups will pick it up. And I think this thing has a good chance of challenging the highs. This is a longer term high. I don't know how far back it goes, but at least a 1 year high around 350. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in terms of a possible overweight position that I have here. So that's my view on technicals. Now, I collaborated with Rex. He shared me his chart. So Rex, by the way, Rex and I did some awesome collaboration on Marin. So that was great because it wasn't on his radar, and I shared Marin with him, and he's crazy, man. He totally predicted the thing from like $3 to $20. So anyway, he we have a good working relationship. He likes ideas coming from StoryTrading. So this is now on his kind of watch list. So this is what he said about AIR. He says the all-time bull pennant setup bounced off the inverse shoulder support at the low 2s, upper 1s. The current weekly support's at 267, 268. Really a penny. Current resistance to clear is 285, monthly shoulder resistance. I think I had seen that on the chart too. And then the low 3s thereafter, a break of the blue dot at the 350s. So that Rex and I are kind of on the same page here. I pointed out the 285 number and the 350 number. So he's seeing that too. So he's saying a break of the blue dot at the 350s should trigger a midterm rally. I don't know what that means. A break of the red dot should trigger a long-term rally. Okay, great. The immediate setup is such that 267s might hold and push. So you can see his commentary there. And basically he said, added to his list, the threes break should trigger some volume buildup. So I think we kind of have a similar view on like between here and 350. He doesn't necessarily know if it's going to break that 285 and then 3 and then go to 350. I'm biased that it will because of the catalyst and the research we're doing here. I think it's going to make that move to 350. What happens after that? Honestly, I have no idea right now. And obviously I could be wrong. It might not get to 350. So, all right, that's a technical view from Rex. So with that, Ashleigh, I'm going to stop my share and open it up to you. I wanted first kind of your thoughts on how I'm viewing these last two press releases. And then you mentioned something new the last few days about, let me bring it up again. You know what I'm talking about, a PDF you shared. So if you comment first on those two and then anything else you want to
add. Sure. So the two recent PRs are related. They're from their initial silicon carbide customer, which is onsemi. They originally purchased a system in September of 2019. They were pretty quick to get on board. I think COVID kind of slowed things down, and now they're ramping, and they're ramping hard. I spoke with Gain. It's probably since the last presentation, maybe in April. He was actually hard to get a hold of, harder than normal. He's busy, and he was basically saying that yeah, their big opportunity right now is in the silicon carbide space, which is electric vehicles. It goes in the inverters and the charging systems for the cars. What he's hearing from the silicon carbide customers, and there's about five. There's 5 big silicon carbide customers out there. onsemi is one of the smallest ones, and he thinks he's pretty confident they can land at least another and perhaps more, because they're the only solution out there. For example, onsemi has, I think they put 6 die together on a module and then test it, and if it fails, they chuck the whole thing, which costs them quite a bit of money. Air System does it before they package it together, and if it fails, you know, they may waste one die instead of wasting and having to throw the whole module. So it's pretty valuable for them to get on to have Air as part of their platform. So they ordered a new system. They PR'd it a day after the end of the fiscal year. I think it's because onsemi didn't want to be in their 10K. They've gotten a little cagey about the relationship. They used to have Air's equipment in one of their presentations, boasting about the technology, and they pulled that out. Not exactly sure why. Maybe they just want to leg up in the game as it's getting competitive and they're all moving this way. Apparently, the customers, the requests coming from the automotive manufacturers to the customers is for silicon carbide and not really asking about their legacy products. So they're all scrambling for supply of silicon carbide and to get these devices out. So yeah, the first order is a system win, and it's part of the initial ramp, so we should expect a lot more. The PR isn't clear on the timing. We don't, and that's, I mean, otherwise the stock would be way higher if we knew that it was a bunch of follow-on systems this year as opposed to a few here and there over the years. The next PR at the end of June was related. When they buy a system, they have to buy a set of WaferPaks to go with it. So it's like the consumable. The piece you picked up on in terms of a new device win, anytime they run a device in the system, they need a new set of WaferPaks. So they have several different products. They need several different WaferPaks to go with them. It's kind of the razor blade model for them. Margins on the consumables are about 50%. On the systems, it's a little lower. I mean, their margins tend to run in the low 40s in terms of gross margins, but that mainly because they have a large manufacturing facility. And once they start getting more system orders, those drop to the bottom line at more like 65%. So if they can start getting consistent orders, then the fundamentals will really be there. And it sounds like they think they can win one of the big silicon carbide customers I would think in the next year. I mean, Gaines talked about not being able to fly to Germany. And there's two big ones, and ST Micro is the one I'm thinking maybe they will land, that is in Europe, that he's wanted to go to and hasn't due to COVID. So COVID's been a headwind for them, and now more of a tailwind as things open up and they can get into the fabs.
Ashley, thank you for that update. You mentioned that there's some presentation that one of their customers used to mention air and they pulled it, but what customer is that?
That's onsemi.
onsemi.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're a supplier of EVs. I believe they supply Tesla, the Model 3. I'm not 100% sure. I believe I read that in the past.
So you think this onsemi is the Fortune 500 they're referring to?
Oh, definitely. They only have one silicon carbide customer, and it's them.
Okay.
And
Okay, perfect.
they've stopped naming them for some reason.
So what's your take on inflection point? Do you think we're there yet with these two announcements, or they still have to prove out something?
I think they were there when I presented a few months ago. We're starting to see the PRs come through.
Cool.
Semi is
I like that. Good
ramping.
answer.
Gaines said, onsemi does about 10 million maybe of silicon carbide business, and their legacy business is something like $1 billion. So there's a big area to grow into. One of the will be useful for anyone who goes back and listens to the conference call. There's an analyst named Larry who's at the end of the call who knows the business very well and throws out some interesting thoughts and nuggets. One of them in the last one, I mean, he said in the past, that to fully provide equipment for the industry, maybe they'd have to sell 100+ million, maybe it was 170 million of equipment a year to service the whole industry. So that's kind of the TAM they're looking at in that space. And onsemi is the smallest, but they're the ones doing the IGBT modules that are really the only thing that the automotive folks are talking about, because the silicon carbide is basically needed for power transfer and for high power, when you're dealing with thousands of watts as opposed to traditional auto vehicles. The other, I want to move on to Rockley, or you have more?
Let me just pause before you do that to remind people when we're done, when Ashley's done, we'll take some questions, and it'll be for VIP members only, not going to be on YouTube. So if you have questions, you can go ahead, put them in chat or raise your hand. We'll get to you. So go ahead, Ashley.
As I posted, threw up there, Rockley Photonics, their investor presentation. They're a SPAC that's going public, ticker SPCE. Actually on the warrants on them. So I like what they do. They're an interesting company that basically, so they've recently disclosed in April that one of their large customers is Apple. And what they're doing is putting lasers on a chip to go in wearables for health sort of biomarkers and monitoring. And so they're getting into blood glucose and a bunch of other things. And it's worth flipping through the presentation to see how exciting it is. They call it a clinic on the wrist, and they monitor 5 or 6 different things, from alcohol, lactate, and a few others. And basically, they claim it's, I think, 2 orders of magnitude more accurate than lab equipment. And current Apple and other sort of watches tend to use LED sensors. Those don't really need to be tested. So where it fits in with air, Apple doesn't need air for the Apple Watch, because they're LED and they don't really fail, and a bunch of other things. But Rockley's chip that's going to be going into the possibly 2022, definitely 2023 watches, that does all this advanced sensing, has the lasers built on top of the chip, a bunch of them, and lasers need to be stabilized, and the chips need to be tested for reliability, all of them, 100%. And so they need something like AEHR system that comes in and stabilizes the lasers and burns them in, make sure that they're not going to fail, especially when you're dealing with health sensors that have to be reliable.
I'm glad you brought up health sensors. I wanted to ask you because on your VIP presentation, I seem to remember a lot of your thesis had to do with speculation that that they're going to get into that area. So I guess my question to you is: these large orders coming in for the EV stuff, is that kind of, were you also counting on that, or is this kind of any kind of positive surprises for you? And you know, between EV and the health sensors, where do you see the bigger near-term opportunity that's going to drive the stock here in the next couple of years?
Gain thinks that silicon carbide is the biggest opportunity in front of them right now. I would agree with that. He's always been cautious about working with Apple because there's two data points on the chart you just put up. You can kind of see them. In 2017, the stock spiked to $5. That was when it was rumored they were working with Apple, and they did. What Apple did was they ended up buying their equipment for sampling instead of full 100% reliability testing. And you mentioned production. What is production? Volume production. Well, when they do volume production, they're full steam in production mode, and they're testing every single, or burning in every single device or every single die. And so they need a lot of systems for that. What Apple was thinking back when the stock spiked in 2017 was that they might need them for a full 100% burn-in, but they ended up using AEHR for sampling, which you only need for maybe 1%, if that, of your products. And so they didn't really need much. They maybe ordered a couple of systems and a few WaferPaks, and that was kind of it. So Gain is cagey about that opportunity and doesn't want to promote it or talk it up too much. But Apple came to AEHR, or Apple's subcontractor, one of the two, and asked them, can you test this? Can you find a solution to it? And in their last earnings update, they said yes, they built it. It's pretty fascinating. They're testing these very tiny, sort of like a chip that fits on a fingernail size devices, and that'll potentially go beyond Apple. I'm thinking, drawing sort of some corollaries to Rockley. Rockley is working with several different manufacturers in the space. They could be Fitbits and some others. I think they named some in the presentation, and some they don't. But it's certainly an opportunity that could go beyond Apple as well. So they've got two things going. I think they can do quite well with silicon carbide, and then if Apple comes in, they could be doing maybe 50 million of orders with them.
So that was the next thing I was going to ask you is let's put Apple aside maybe. Just because the silicon carbide seems like it's happening right now, right? So what do you have, like a fair value or price target in mind here? I don't know, 12 months out. Have you how do you look at that in terms of your return on this? And
it's tough to gauge based on, because they've always been lumpy in the past, and you're just sort of seeing more consistency coming forward. But they need to get out of a $20 to 30 million range of revenues and get into a 50, 60 million kind of range. But if it drops the bottom line to 65%, you're looking at more in the $5 to $10 stock range. And that can come from silicon carbide. It can come from Apple. We haven't talked at all about the opportunities in silicon photonics for 5G and optical transceivers, but that's also a space where they've recently announced that their customers are moving to volume production. And those customers during COVID were building facilities specifically to install AEHR's equipment. And Gain is literally tapping his fingers on the desk, waiting for those orders to come in.
Cool.
They could come in now, they could come in at the end of the summer. I really don't know. But they've got a lot of shots on goal, shall we say. So a lot of our names have a lot of shots on goal at the moment, and they certainly do.
Awesome. That's very helpful. I appreciate that color, Ashleigh. So if anyone has any questions for myself or Ashleigh, you can go ahead. This is a VIP Q&A session. We're recording it for our VIP members, but it's going to be edited out of the YouTube. It goes up later. So you can go ahead and raise your hand, put something in chat. And I see my colleague Rob is here with us again. Rob, you got any questions or comments on this?
I could have many because I've been in the semiconductor space for 3 years, and I can't talk about anything my company does, but in general, semiconductors are becoming a lot more complex because of electric vehicles. They're starting to use them for a lot more medical devices. They're getting into self-driving cars, which are going to be run by microprocessors and need to be extremely precise. So in the past, I've always kind of ignored air systems because I didn't know when it was going to do well, but I see it doing well in the very near future. One question I have to Ashleigh is, like, it sounds like a lot of companies are not using air systems right now. I would ask, like, what are the alternatives to air? Is there other testing equipment, other burn-in? Are they creating their own systems to do this? Or is it just what I just stated, the lack of complexity in microprocessors that has kept, like, air not being extremely successful in the past?
Okay, great question, Rob. Ashleigh.
I would say, yeah, their Fox system came out in probably 2014. That's their system that does wafer level test and burn in. I would agree that it was a lack of complexity. They have heterogeneous chips now where they're using multiple different materials together on the same chips, and as you're talking about automotive and self-driving, the amount of reliability required has gone up dramatically. Air is also very good at high power applications. So the more power and wattage necessary, the more they're in demand. So I think that it's sort of like the technology has caught up to where theirs is now useful and really creates a value proposition. Like for the electric vehicle example, they don't have to test in wafer form. They can put it together and test it afterwards with someone else's equipment. But if it fails, it costs them a lot more money. It hits their margins. So they want to get in with air to do it at the wafer level beforehand and save a bunch of money. So it's a lot of it is a cost advantage. In the Apple case, there isn't anything else out there at all. So it sort of depends on the application. They also mentioned in the silicon photonics space, they had a customer that was doing workarounds and putting things together, testing them, and then taking them apart, or vice versa. And sort of they make the processes a lot more efficient. And they have a large factory, so if they start to get in orders, they don't necessarily need to grow their footprint. And then one of the most recent SEC filings that came in, the executives have reinstated their salaries, maybe as of a few weeks ago, and I see that as bullish and also indicative that they wouldn't need to do a raise. If they did a raise, I'd be buying, because they would be using the money for something really exciting. I don't see that happening.
I also have a question on, so one thing I like about air systems is you have, like, this is well known in the industry too, there's a collision of two things: the shortage of microprocessors. So anything you can do to test microprocessors and save them, which allows you to scrap or throw away less microprocessors, is good for the industry right now. And the increase in complexity of microprocessors, I like the air systems handles that. I think those two things, if they collide at the right time, could be very well for the company. Have you seen Air Systems getting any more orders to that are semiconductor manufacturers that are looking to reduce their scrap rates because of the processor shortage in the industry?
I didn't really hear that. I think the price action in February was, you would see a bunch of stock puts sort of posts going, oh, there's semi shortages by Air and a bunch of others in the space. But I think it's sort of talking about the electric vehicle example. They're helping the shortage problem where that ON Semi is not having to scrap as many die and as they put them together. So they definitely play a role there. And then on a side note, I forgot to mention, every time I talk to Gain, he also reminds me at the end of the call that they are trying to get into the memory space. They've been building a product for the memory space, which requires high automation. If they're successful in landing a memory company, they'd probably be a triple-digit company stock. I don't know what the likelihood of that happening is, but it's always nice to have a long ball opportunity. Gain is a memory executive, or formerly. So he has contacts in the space, and they do talk to a few players in the space here and there.
Did I hear you say, Ashleigh, it could be a triple-digit stock if they get into the memory industry?
I would say 50 to 100 is not unrealistic if that happens. Gainall says, you know, that's a few to several years out, probably in terms of the lead times on getting into the process. So
Nice.
something they're working on, and they're actively building actively building something to satisfy that market at a time when they've cut executive salaries. So that's how important the project is to them, that they're spending R&D dollars on it.
Great. Thank you, Ashleigh. In the interest of time, I think we're going to move forward from here. We have a bunch of other topics. So you guys can continue chatting about this in the VIP investing room if you'd like, but like more specific conversations, just to keep it clutter-free, you know, the AIR research group, that's for VIP members only. The link to that is in the WhatsApp info section of the VIP group. We have a new link there for all of our research groups. So Ashleigh, again, thank you so much. Awesome VIP pick. We'll continue collaborating on this.
Great, thanks.
Great, thank you. So with that, I want to move to the Surfside collapse. I've been talking about this the last few days. Are there investing opportunities amidst this human tragedy? So here's the premise of this potential trade, or maybe even investment idea. The premise is, what if this collapse is not a 1 in a million event based on negligence, right? What if it's possibly due to aging infrastructure in the United States, or saltwater erosion of seaside structures? I guess I should add here with that, Miami sinking, or certain areas of land sinking, perhaps with sea level rise. Widespread poor maintenance of buildings could be happening across the country. And this one's interesting to me, is widespread potentially non-action by owners and associations, right? So maybe they're doing some maintenance, but maybe they're also getting some inspection reports, and they get these reports that say, hey, there's structural damage here. And I wonder, and I probably educated guess, there's probably a large amount of these kind of reports coming from engineers saying there's structural damage, and no one does anything about it because it's expensive, right? So, the premise of this is, even if it's proven to be 1 in a million negligence, right, which I'm not sure that it is, right? I think it might be a combination of all these factors, right? Regarding the pool, right? 1 in a million, meaning it's a very specific thing having to do with that pool. So it's not going to be replicable with any other situation, right? But I think it's a combination of these. But even if it is proven to be that, so as far as a trade or investment thesis, right, you still have fear from occupants and owners of buildings that may act on that fear, right? Not caring that, hey, this was because of the pool and nothing else. They're going to be fearful, and they may take action. There may be a fundamental play here, right? With engineering firms having more work, and then market sentiment may be there. So even if there's no one benefits from anything. You can see traders over the next couple weeks, and we might be a little late. I don't know. Tomorrow morning, you might see a bunch of gap ups because I don't have any names yet. That there could be a market sentiment trade here of engineering firms that are maybe concrete restoration, foundation restoration, or companies that do inspections, this type of structural integrity inspections. So, I think this could drive extremely profitable trade opportunities. And, I just want to remind people, I don't have any ideas for you. Don't have time. I'm just putting out there for you for your guys' benefits, and I'd love to profit from it too. So if you have something, please let me know. But basically, let's take this opportunity again to crowdsource research, discover, collaborate, and validate market-moving information. John S. got the ball rolling. I don't know if he's here. Let's see if John is on the call. There's a few Johns. No, I don't think John S. is. But he shared a couple links, one on the 10 best engineering and construction stocks you can invest in. That link's in the VIP room. He shared another link of theories for collapse. So he got the ball rolling. I think potentially if you find the right stock with small market cap or small float, or maybe not even, maybe it's a larger market cap, but they're very specific for this type of work, man, I would love to be in that, potentially for a longer term investment, but definitely as a trade. And I think this is something that will have legs over many weeks, maybe even many months as a trade. So that's the thesis. And I'm just going to stop there because I have nothing else to share for you except that premise. I have no stocks, no nothing. So let me open it up. First, Rob, let's talk about this because I feel like in the COVID days, this is when we really had a good rapport together and we did a lot of great stuff. This is exactly the type of stuff you like to invest in, right? Like being on top of the news and being the first one in a stock that's kind of led by a new situation. So what's your thoughts on this trade idea potential?
So I do have some news on this one. It sounds like, massive building collapsed, but how many other buildings have collapsed and how many other structures are affected by this? Because it was massive, like the microprocessor shortage and the things going on with uranium, those are going to be massive. And I have heard about that, like bridge infrastructure and building infrastructure, US large, you might see more collapses like this, but you will need it to actually start happening to like other buildings and other bridges for trades like this to actually work. Because
I hope it doesn't happen, first of all.
I just jumped in.
That's the last of it.
I just jumped into research what actually happened, and it sounded like the parking garage for this building had like improper drainage for many years.
From the pool.
So water was getting in through all the concrete of the structure and deteriorating it for many years. And none of that was done properly and everything collapsed because of that. That might be a pretty unique situation because you don't hear about things like this happening all the time. A better target might be the bridges in the US. I hear about a lot of like concrete bridges that could collapse, and some already have, and they're deteriorating. So the government may get involved and put up money and raise funding to fix all these bridges. And any company that's involved with that will get a massive windfall for helping redesign, rebuild, or support those bridges.
And that's a good thing you brought up because that's been in the political conversation, right? As far as an infrastructure bill. So we know there's big money there. I don't know the status of that, of when it's going to pass, or if there's bipartisan support, or if it's needed even. But we know that's part of the backdrop that's a tailwind for this sort of trade. So I totally agree with you. But I will disagree with you on, does this need to happen twice? I feel like this was such a major event that's, I don't ever remember this happening in America. Like my first reaction was, and I heard it from a few people, like this is not supposed to happen in America, right? So just one time, it's not supposed to happen in America. That's what people, perception is. And I think even if it is proven to be a 1 in a million negligence because of the pool, I mean, it was so tragic and so traumatic what happened. I really think that you can see increased business from associations and owners Because again, going back to those reports, you think that's the only one with structural integrity issues? I'm sure there's, who knows, hundreds, maybe even thousands of buildings that an engineering does some inspection and says, yeah, there's some structural issues that have to be taken care of at some point, right? This report, because it said the same thing, the engineers that did these inspections didn't say it's an imminent risk of collapse. They just said there's structural issues and it's got to be taken care of. How many other reports are out there like that? I bet you a lot. I bet you a lot, Rob. So I don't know. I have a difference of opinion on does it need to happen twice. I think once is enough to talk to cause a fundamental. I'm not even talking about sentiment. I'm actually talking about fundamentals to see money flowing to engineering firms to address some of these issues.
I think they said in 2018 there were reports that people were saying everything looked good still. And then all of a sudden in 2020, there were some engineering reports where they said, this isn't fine. This needs to be replaced immediately.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing about concrete and water leakage. Over like 1 year's time, you can see pretty significant damage if the drainage is not done properly. Before that, it can last a very long time. You can have sudden damage and things can get worse much quickly. But I've been part of condo associations before, and it's usually about like saving as much money as you can sometimes, and like you're told you got to do this, but you don't have the money to do it, so you do whatever you can. And I've seen entire condos just like fall apart and crumble and get abandoned. So this situation actually doesn't surprise me as much as it surprises others. Because I know a few towns around me that have condos that have crumbled and they've been deserted. I think it's just special that, and like horrible that this one actually collapsed and fell to pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also terrible it happened in the middle of the night because it looks like there was at least a few minutes warning. I don't know if it was 3 or 5 minutes, but there was some warning, and it's just terrible. If it happened during the day, more people could have escaped. But
yeah.
All right. So with that, in the interest of time, we're going to move on. It was an awesome conversation, Rob. Let's keep it going in the VIP chat room. If there's momentum on this, if there's opportunities, we'll open up a dedicated chat room for this. But for now, you can discuss that in the VIP investing room. Want to remind people, you can go to StoryTrading.com, click on VIP events. We have a couple events coming up. CEO presentation this Wednesday. I believe it's, well, you can see it on there. I have so many CEO presentations lately. I forget the name of this one. It's loading. Here we go. It's going to be Cubian.
CEO of Apple.
No, we are getting there. But it's going to be Cubian coming up on this Wednesday, July 7th. We got Dario coming back. Erez Raphael from Dario Health is coming back for like the 4th time. That got pushed back by a week, was July 14th. We just pushed it back to July 21st. So you can keep track of our events there. Follow us on YouTube, Twitter. Please, if you're a member of our community, you like the content, go ahead, like, share. It's really important to get the word out. So with that, thank you very much. We're going to hang on. We're going to stop the recording and hang on for our VIP members to do Trade of the Week. Thank you, everyone.